The story of Rocket Raccoon is a tragic one, full of love and violence, family and loyalty. It's a grand cosmic adventure and yet retains a deeply personal journey. His story has been fleshed out quite a bit in the pages of Marvel comic books, and rumors are that this will be the case as well with James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Part 3. So it's a perfect time to dive into the history and the origin of Rocket Raccoon. Fair warning, there may be some spoilers ahead for our little trash panda friends, so with that warning, on to the video. But before we start, let me say thank you for watching the channel, whether it's your first time here or you're back for more. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the content we upload just like this each and every week. Let's jump right into the story. Created by Keith Giffen and Bill Mantlo in 1976, Rocket Raccoon first appeared in the 7th issue of a comic book called Marvel Preview. He was called Rocky in this issue and was actually inspired by a Beatles song about Rocky Raccoon. Giffen and Mantlo were Beatles fans, and the story of Rocky and his girlfriend in the song actually aligned to the story of Rocket on the page. In the story, Rocky was living on a planet called Hilleli, also called Witch World, where Prince Wayfinder landed for supplies, and they ended up fighting a monster called a Plagiosaur. And that's when they run into Kirky, Queen Ruler of Witch World, and her anthropomorphic subjects. But this ends up being the Earth 7614 version of Rocket. After that issue, it would be nearly a decade before fans saw Rocky again, and this time the 616 version. In 1982's Hulk 271, Rocky became Rocket. Despite the name change, the writer of the issue, one of the co-creators of Rocket, Bill Mantlo, continued with the Beatles song alignment in the story. And after that, he really didn't get to see much action. He was in very few issues for the first couple decades of his life. Rocket got his own miniseries in 85, he was in Quasar, and just a couple issues of She-Hulk in that time period, and that's pretty much it. But here is his story. Ages ago, there was an ancient and mysterious humanoid civilization who decided that their mentally ill citizens would be best served by living together elsewhere, protected from both themselves and from others. So the therapists and doctors of that civilization loaded these patients up onto these massive spaceships and embarked on a space journey to look for a new planet for them to inhabit. They brought a legion of animals along as companions and aides, and eventually they found a planet in a star system called Keystone Quadrant and the largest planet in that system called Half-World to settle on. They built a vast network of therapeutic and mental health facilities for their patients, with their entire system of planets working together in unison. To protect their patients, the doctors built a massive wall around the entire quadrant called the Galatian Wall. The animals they brought along worked alongside their patients, working as entertainment and companionship in both therapeutic and support roles. The humans also built robots to help care for the patients too, and after a while, the doctors were called home, so they left the animals and their patients in the care of the robotic force that they'd put in place. The robots farmed half of the planet for its resources, hence the name Half-World, to build farming equipment, transportation, and tools for the animals to use to care for the human patients. Rocket was one of these, and he came to be head of security on Half-World, with a rabbit named Blackjack O'Hare as his chief of security. Over time, the robots gained sentience and decided to start performing genetic experimentation and cybernetic manipulation on the animals of the planet, wanting to make them even more useful and take on even more jobs. They built fake robotic limbs, rearranged their brain structure, and played with their intelligence, tore them apart, and Frankenstein the animals in horrific and terrifying procedures into these basically entirely new creations. They cut them open and rearranged their skeletal and muscular systems and inserted implants in these grotesque operations that actually enabled them to be bipedal, meaning they can walk on 2 feet. Rocket was one of these. When Rocket awoke in his room from that last of the procedures, he gazed in a mirror and saw his final form, the form we know him as today. Defeated and broken, Rocket crumbled to the floor in tears and agony at what they'd done to him. It was a powerful moment for a character we know to be no-nonsense and tough as nails. And Rocket grew to be a fierce protector of his people and friends. He was, in fact, the chief protector of not only Half-World, but of the entire Keystone Quadrant. He would continue to patrol the quadrant with his walrus friend named appropriately Walrus, and his ship named the Rack and Ruin, a ship that Lila named for its alliterative attraction. The animals continued to evolve, building massive global toy company conglomerates that became the foundation for their new society. One toy company was called Mayhem Mechanics, and the chief toy maker of Mayhem Mechanics was an evil mole named Judson Jakes, who assassinated the husband and wife who owned that company, leaving their daughter as the sole heiress. And that daughter happened to be an otter girl named Lila, who was Rocket's girlfriend. One day, depicted in Hulk 271, Rocket was patrolling with his friend Walrus when they encountered a jade giant. The Hulk from Earth had been stranded there by Galaxy Masters. Before Rocket had his MCU jetpack, he had these little rocket skates, and he used them here with his laser Rocket-matic pistol to shoot a robot lawnmower headed towards the fallen Hulk. And it didn't work, but Hulk woke up and actually smashed the machine to bits with his fists. And this was right around the time that the Toy Wars began on Half-World. Judson Jakes, now head of Interstellar Mechanics, had his chief scientist, a tortoise named Uncle Pico, create assassin robots like the killer clowns who look like ICP on acid. And he also hired Blackjack O'Hare and his Black Bunny Brigade as hired guns for sabotage and wet work. He was taking out other companies, his goal to acquire the Gideon Bible, which is a book that told the story of the first comers eons ago that had since left. So Rocket and Walrus took Hulk and they went to find Lila, but his skunk friend named Stinker told him that Judson Jakes had Lila, and they ended up finding her. And told him in the pages of Annihilators there was this Earthling named Star Thief who had wound up on Half-World. In prison for his madness, Star Thief tried to escape multiple times, and if he did manage to escape, his psychoses would infect the entire cosmos. Rocket decided to use the bioorganic nature of Half-World as a lock, with they the key, ensuring the Galatian wall would not be penetrated, thus keeping Star Thief inside and the cosmos safe. Rocket had his mind wiped and he left the planet, losing his memory of Half-World, Lila, Blackjack, and all of his friends. It was like locking a lock and throwing away the key. Later in the pages of John Byrne's 1990s run, Sensational She-Hulk, Rocket got himself turned into stone by the fake Dabari asparagus people. And what do I mean by that? Well, you'll have to read that story. It wouldn't be until 2007 in a story called Annihilation Conquest Star-Lord that Rocket would become a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Quill had to form a new team in the wake of Annihilation Wave as the techno-organic species, the Phalanx, were invading Hala, the Kree homeworld. It was Star-Lord, Rocket, Groot, Mantis, Deathcry, and Bug. But by Annihilation Conquest 6, the team had become Star-Lord, Rocket, Groot, Gamora, Mantis, Drax, as well as Phyla-Vell and Adam Warlock. Rocket was finally on the team with their oon title in 2008, gracing the cover, guns ablaze, looking mean as ever. They took up a suggestion from Nova and went to nowhere to establish a base. But that team disbanded after they learned that Star-Lord had used Mantis' powers to influence them to actually join the team, and the name they took after they rescued Vance Astro, who was from the original Guardians team. So Rocket took Vance, Groot, Mantis, and Bug to form another iteration of the team. During Thanos' Imperative, when the 616 universe was invaded by the nasty twisted doppelgangers from the Cancerverse, they all thought Star-Lord had sacrificed himself and died. In Annihilators, Rocket Raccoon was working in customer service at the Alpha Centauri offices of Timely Incorporated. After he thought Star-Lord died and the Guardians team disbanded, Rocket thought he'd be better off in an ordinary job, of all things. There, he had a suspicious package come in the package was a killer clown assassin from Half-World. Rocket went to save Groot on Planet X, so he could also help, and when they talked, memories of Half-World came back to him. More killer clowns attacked, and they fought back with help from another anthropomorphic squad on Groot's planet called the Undergrowth Resistance. So they took this space ambulance that kind of reminds me of the Winnebago from Spaceballs back to Half-World, where they were met immediately with 24 nuclear fusion warheads that were fired at them by Blackjack O'Hare. That's when they told him about his story with Star Thief and why he couldn't remember. They helped him save Half-World from Star Thief, and Blackjack offered Rocket his old job back, but he said, no thanks, I'm gonna go continue the legacy of the Guardians and save the galaxy. And also at this time, his ex-girlfriend Lila was married to Blackjack. He then joined up with a new iteration of the Guardians, which also happened to include Iron Man, Tony Stark. They quickly helped out the Avengers in Avengers Assemble, then they fought the Badoon. In Guardians Volume 3, Issue 9 from 2014, Rocket teamed up with Angela and Star-Lord to help get Abigail Brand out of Sword. The 2014 series Rocket Raccoon by Scotty Young found Rocket wanted for murder. And it turns out that it was Blackjack O'Hare in a raccoon suit running around killing people as Rocky. Blackjack was supposed to kill a princess as bounty, who happened to also be one of Rocket's girlfriends, and that payout would have allowed Blackjack to finally retire, but Rocket got there, saved her, and boom, Blackjack's grudge. That series ended just before 2015's Secret Wars event, and during Secret Wars, Rocket was killed by the Children of Tomorrow in the very first issue. It was during the incursion that preceded Secret Wars when the 616 main universe and the 1610 Ultimate universe were colliding. But 8 months after Secret Wars, Scotty Young's Rocket Raccoon and Groot series launched, and Rocket was back. It opened with Rocket dead, but Pockets and Shrub alive. There was also a Lord Razkoon that ended up being Rocket in disguise, waiting for Groot to find him by way of the map carved into Groot's wooden body. Yes, Secret Wars did bring him back. Rocket helped fight the Goddess of Darkness herself in 2019's Avengers No Road Home, along with Conan, the Barbarian, Voyager, Spectrum, and a few Avengers. Then Donny Cates had a Death of Rocket Raccoon arc in 2019's Guardians volume. These horrific experiments that made Rocket into who he is were coming undone. The parts were dying, and so was he. He actually had to wear a life support mech suit, and eventually he couldn't even be out of the suit without dying. But Rocket's suit was destroyed in a fight that involved the Child Magus and the Church of Universal Truth. All the Guardians, even Child Magus, Lockjaw, Cosmic Ghost Rider, the Black Silver Surfer, and Beta Ray Bill took their friend Rocket to Half-World to get updated parts and to save him. And he was saved. And finally, Al Ewing has a new volume of Guardians for 2020, which sees Rocket now in a regular suit since he's out of his surgery and feeling better than ever. He was with Marvel Boy, Hercules, and Moondragon fighting Olympian gods, and that's how his story continues into the future of the Marvel Universe as Rocket continues to guard the galaxy one story at a time. In the MCU, a Xandarian named Roman Day, played by John C. Reilly, reveals via Rocket's historical record that what we know of his history so far aligns with this comic book origin, along with the scars we have on his back. In a recent Q&A on Twitter, James Gunn, the Guardians director, was asked about Rocket, and he said, quote, "I'll just say Rocket is a big part of what's happening in the future. And a lot of the stuff, like the scars we're about to see on his back, sets up what I've been planning for Rocket all along," unquote. So that tells you where they're going with the story in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. What that means is that Rocket will get his story fleshed out, and this is where we can say he'll meet Lyla, visit Half-World, maybe Black Jack O'Hare will be there. However, in a change to his backstory, I did hear all the way back in early 2019 that a villain named High Evolutionary may be responsible for Rocket's changes, which would bring his story up. He wouldn't have the first comers, but also High Evolutionary may be responsible for creating him ultimately, working with Aisha, now known as Adam Warlock, and so that story would bring a level of consistency across the board for some of the new characters we're about to get. High Evolutionary is known for genetic manipulation, so that would be perfect in terms of his story. Rocket's played via mocap, motion capture technology, by James Gunn. He's voiced by Bradley Cooper, and his design and movements and behavioral idiosyncrasies were inspired by a raccoon named Oreo, who sadly passed away. But no fear, we'll still have plenty of Rocket Raccoon coming to us in the future. And that's a wrap on this one, my friends. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can be one of the first to know when I upload videos just like this each and every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.